Welcome to the QEM Heroes webinar series. I'm Christine Wood, and I serve as the Assistant Program Director for the Heroes Fellows Program at QEM. For more than 30 years, QEM has been a national catalyst for STEM education transformation and research capacity building. Currently, the QEM network serves nearly 900 colleges and universities and reaches more than 8,000 individuals nationwide. This webinar is part of the QEM Heroes Initiative. The Heroes program brings together experienced researchers with experience in the federal government to lend their expertise and support to the STEM research and education communities. Our fellows are here to provide tools and tips for navigating the funding landscape, developing STEM programs and partnerships, and improving talent retention in in-demand fields. We hope this series promotes engagement with our Heroes Fellows and provides valuable resources to our participants. During the webinar, we invite you to use the Q&A tool to ask questions, and after the presentation, attendees will have the opportunity to raise their hands and ask questions live. The webinar recordings and slides will be available in the QEM Resource Hub. By attending this webinar, you will be added to the QEM network and granted access to the Resource Hub. And I am very happy to introduce our presenters today. Dr. Ramsey Smith is a distinguished professional with nearly 20 years of experience in civil space, defense space, technology development, and international security sectors. His credentials include the QEM Heroes Fellowship, the International Career Advancement Program Fellowship, the NASA Postdoctoral Fellowship, a PhD in physical chemistry and atmospheric chemistry from Howard University, and a BS in chemistry from Morehouse College. Dr. Quincy Brown is the principal of Futures and Innovation, leading education and workforce strategic development and advising. With more than 25 years of experience in engineering and technology, she specializes in STEM education and workforce development. Most recently, Quincy served as Director of Space STEM and Workforce Policy in the White House National Space Council. Her career includes senior policy roles across two presidential administrations in the White House Office of Science and Technology Policy, Senior Director for Innovation Research at anitaB.org, Program Director for STEM Education Research at the American Association for the Advancement of Science, and Computer Science Professor at Bowie State University. Quincy holds a bachelor's degree in electrical engineering and master's and doctoral degrees in computer sciences. So without further ado, I'm happy to introduce our presenters today and turn the floor over to them.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. This is Ramsey Smith and Quincy Brown, and our presentation today is Space Education and Policy. Over to you, Quincy.
We're going to cover just a few things and hopefully spark some really great discussion. We'll talk about why space, like why are we even talking about this topic? We'll review space priorities, national priorities. We'll talk about some of the space policy and the way that policy translates to campuses. And then we will close with kind of a discussion and sharing of resources and opportunities.
And we already went over our bio, so we're going to skip past these slides. I give you a moment to review it.
So what I wanted to do is start with, in my bio, my most recent position in government was with the National Space Council. And I will say, unlike Ramsey, who has, earned degrees related to space and been doing this space work for his career, I have not. And when I started doing space work, I really spent a lot of time thinking about like what space means, why why space is important, um, and really how to convey that. Part of my job at the Space Council was focused on education and workforce, but for me, part of it was also understanding how to communicate to people about why space is important, not just for the things that we think about with regard to like space exploration and astronauts, but really, really important for life here on Earth. So you can go to the next slide. Um, and I, have never met someone who didn't love astronauts, right? And if you know of someone doesn't love an astronaut, let me know. But I've not met anyone who doesn't love astronauts. Um, I've met lots of people who have no idea what astronauts do, how the work that they do when they are in space, training to go to space, when they come back, how that has helped life on Earth. And so I like to think about and refer to this area when I talk about space is really about space for Earth because space is a destination, right? It's a geography, it's an environment, right? Fascinating research environment, microgravity, all sorts of things that you can do in that environment that you cannot do on Earth. And it's a source of inspiration. And so there's so much that we know about the Earth, whether because of our space activity, right? Whether it's about climate, right? Whether it's about weather patterns, right? If it's about satellites and navigation, right? GPS, we wouldn't have that without satellites that are orbiting the planet. Whether it's about, a lot of people who think about applications to food production, right, are related to what we know about the Earth because we have the satellites and this data about the Earth. What I love to think about also is regard to healthcare and precision medicine, the advancements in drug discovery that again, as I mentioned, thinking about microgravity and space as a research environment, right? What we're able to produce in that environment that we cannot produce as well here on Earth is really fascinating. And so space is really, really important for our life here on Earth today, not as like this futuristic, voyeuristic, destination or tourist activity, but really, really, really important and vital for our life here on Earth today. And you can go to the next slide. A couple, like one of the ways, because it's all the things, right? To think about space with regard to industry sectors and the space economy is in these three big buckets. This notion of space direct, space enabled, and space research are not ones that I made up. So I'll give credit to the Bureau of Economic Analysis, BEA. I'm trying to get out of the acronyms. BEA and the space economy report that they publish, which lists again these three big buckets of space direct, space enabled, and space research. And these cover things including launch vehicles, satellite communications, spacecraft subsystems, ground systems. Right, this is like the spacecraft testing and integration. All of the things that include are under Earth observation, right? Space exploration and tourism. There's in-orbit servicing, assembly and manufacturing, which Ramsey is going to talk a little bit about later. But all of these things are part of the space economy and part of different sectors of space. Next slide. And, again, as you say the word space, people tend to think of astronauts. If you talk about this with regard to campuses, people their minds go to aerospace engineering or astronomy or physics, but really space is so much more than all of that, right? So from a technology perspective, there's a lot on the advanced manufacturing side. There is materials, right? Thinking about robotics and automation, electronics, semiconductor, AI, cyber, quantum, right? There's a lot of, when you think about it from the science perspective, right? Obviously, there's earth science, planetary science, but there's also lunar discovery, astrobiology, weather, as I mentioned, climate, agriculture, health, medicine. So all of these areas are part of what we're referring to when we talk about space. And those look very different, or in some ways similar, in some ways that you might not think about when this comes down to a campus, right? And so again, obviously engineering is kind of obvious, but it's also biology, Ramsey's background, chemistry, right? Medicine, Nutrition and food science are very, very important because again, as people are in space, they have to, be well nourished, right? How do you keep food appealing? It's one of the things I learned about that I thought was really interesting. How do you keep food not just nutritious, but like people to so that people like visually want to eat it is really important if you're thinking about long duration space travel. Agriculture, again, business, finance, there are a lot of non-STEM areas that are very, very important for space. Business, finance, law, a lot of legal questions are arising, IP questions, textiles, right, is an area that people don't think about very often. But again, you have to have materials. Um, and so like understanding how all of that works and the materials, the fabrics are very, very important. Computer science, but those are a lot of those areas focus on 4-year and advanced degrees, but there are a lot of opportunities for those on at 2-year institutions, right, at our community colleges and technical colleges, who have a host of very, very important vital skills, electrical technicians, right, people who do like electromechanical assembly, there are all sorts of testing positions. Non-destructive testers are vitally, vitally important in the manufacturing of a lot of the vehicles. There's business administration. Think about space as not just a United States-based um, enterprise, but really there's a large need for international relations, right? Foreign affairs, people who have that expertise, IT, electrical and industrial engineering, IE. And so like this list is not exhaustive, but I hope that it reflects all of the ways and all of the places on campus that regardless of your background or your students' interests, there is opportunity for them to engage in, learn, and contribute to our space economy. Next slide. I think it's over to you, Ramsey.
Thank you so much, Quincy. That was very informational slides, and that helps us transition into discussing the space policy landscape. So there are multiple areas of space policy, and here we highlighted a few: commercial, civil, national security, international, and educational workforce. And Quincy did a great job of highlighting these areas in our previous slides. So now we want to let you know that these areas are relevant in the space policy arena. And the space policy arena also folds into the federal space ecosystem. And so, as we know, the federal government is huge. It's a huge entity, and there's multiple stakeholders that have equities in space. So here we're going to highlight a few of them. On this slide, we will highlight several of the space organiz civil organizations that have space equities. I'm not going to read the list. You can read it while I'm highlighting a few. I'm going to start with the obvious one, NASA. I spent the first part of my career at NASA in multiple capacities, and they were the premier agency for space, but they are not the only agency that has equities in space. You also have the Department of Commerce, which houses the Office of Space Commerce, and they are now in charge of space traffic management. Many of you have heard about orbital debris and how that can have a cascading negative effect on how we explore and utilize space. That office is working to manage that problem. You also have the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, NOAA. They're responsible for monitoring meteorological conditions for Earth, and they are housed under the Department of Commerce. So the Department of Commerce has several space equities listed here. National Science Foundation, the Department of Transportation, that's where the Federal Aviation Administration is located, and they have a role for regulating and providing policies for space endeavors for not just federal government, but also for commercial space as well. Now I'll move over to discuss national security, the defense sector for the most part. Um, the United States Space Force, United States Air Force, the Missile Defense Agency. You have DARPA, which is a Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency. They do a lot of funding for the hard problems in the defense sector. And for the very difficult problems within the space sector, they fund those. And those are usually projects that would take 3 to 5 years to execute, but have they will have implications in a more distant future because they're not problems that we need to solve for today. And many may not think about the U.S. Navy and Army as having equities in space. But as Quincy mentioned earlier, when you talk about GPS and communications, those are two examples in which all of the services have to utilize space. So space enables and unlocks a lot of resources for our colleagues who are on the defense side of space and just the defense industry in general. Then you have the federally funded research and development centers, FFRDCs. And I've listed a few here, and I will just highlight a few on this list. Aerospace Corporation, Jet Propulsion Laboratory. Most people think of Jet Propulsion Laboratory as a NASA center, but they're also a FFRDC. And the National Radio Astronomy Observatory. So you have those three and a host of others who provide anywhere from basic science research that is related to space to key advisory roles in science, technology, and policy like Aerospace Corporation. And all of those organizations that I mentioned in some way have a mission that points to these national priorities for the Office of Science and Technology Policy. The list that I have listed here was is derived from a memo that was released in September of 2025, and we have a resource in that later on in this presentation. The highlighted items are items that have space equities built into them, and those are artificial intelligence, quantum information science and technology, semiconductors, and microelectronics. Many of you are familiar with the efforts that were funded under the CHIPS Act. These are continuations of those. Advanced communication networks, future computing technologies, advanced manufacturing, advanced military capabilities, America's Golden Dome, aerospace engineering and space systems, space, planetary and space sciences, applied physics, computer science, data science and modeling, material science and engineering. So now that we've gone through the policies, some of the priorities that are coming from the executive branch, and some of the federal agencies and departments that have equities in space, how do you take what they're working on in DC, and we use DC broadly to represent the federal government itself to your campus? So we provided a case study here so you can see how some of this plays out. One of the areas that Quincy mentioned was in space servicing, assembly, and manufacturing. The White House released a strategy for in space servicing, assembly, and manufacturing. I'm used to saying ISAM, so excuse me for stumbling over the words. So we're going to say ISAM from moving forward. The White House released the strategy for ISAM back in 2022. And following that, they released a implementation plan for the strategy. And that's usually the sequence. If the White House releases a strategy coming from OSTP. Then after that, they usually release an implementation plan on how they would implement that strategy through a wealth of um, opportunities and engagement, not just with the federal sector, but also with the whole ecosystem, with a wide range of stakeholders and partners. And they usually relate back to OSTP efforts. So the strategy we have listed here is from the previous administration. However, it does still relate to OSTP efforts in this current administration. So that's one of the takeaways we want you to get from this is there usually is some continuity with efforts that were in previous administrations and current administration. It may take work to see the linkage between the two, but they're usually there. Engineering doesn't change, physics doesn't change, but administrations do. Um, Also listed here are some government agencies who had equities in both of these, the implementation plan and the strategy. NASA, at the time it was Department of Defense, but Department of War. United States Space Force, which is under the Department of Air Force. DARPA and FAA. And we have links here for you to read through both of these strategies at your leisure. But here's a timeline on how this whole situation played out and how it affected not only the federal government ecosystem, but also university campuses as well. So SpaceWorks, which is Space Force's arm of how they execute technology development, like through small business innovation research, small business technology transfer. And two of my colleagues presented, I believe it was earlier this month, a great presentation on SBIR and STTR. So please reference that. It's in our resources folder that's shared with all participants. But SpaceWorks is how they execute that for space equities within the Department of the Air Force. They released a solicitation, a phase one STTR, in November of 2021 through a program they call Orbital Prime. And what they wanted to do was they wanted to seed the very fertile research institutions and small businesses who were able to work on ISAM type of issues. In parallel, several of the government agencies I mentioned on the previous slide were working together to draft the national ISAM strategy. And they end up releasing that strategy in April of 2022, which is a few months after the solicitation was released. In November of 2022, SpaceWorks awarded 124 STTR Phase 1 awards. Each of those awardees were awarded $250,000 to work on their projects. And because they were through SpaceWorks, they're contracts, not grants. So that adds a very unique layer to help those innovators in the long run. Um, if you take a notes, write down phase three SBIR and look it up. It will benefit you for years if you ever win a SBIR. And so that's millions of dollars they seeded into the ISAM ecosystem. Soon after that, the national ISAM implementation plan was released. And soon after that, in 2023, an organization, Cosmic, is a consortium for space mobility and in space manufacturing. Um, they formed, and this organization is comprised of industry, government, and universities and policymakers who want to lift up and push forward ideas in ISAM. So you see over this roughly 2-year time period, that small sector took 10 seconds of what Quincy mentioned on the previous slide, exploded. And from that, there was a SpaceWorks award that was awarded in May of 2024 for $37.5 million for a demonstration mission to demonstrate ISAM efforts through the Strat-5 program. The Strat-5 is funded through SpaceWorks, and it's the Strategic Funding Initiative program. And they reward between $3 to $5 million in funding. But it includes matching funds, and so that's what can make the awards even larger.
Quincy, oh, Ramsey, I have a question in the Q&A box that's relevant to the SpaceWorks program.
Yes.
SpaceWorks has expired, as mentioned in the website. Is there any chance it will become active soon?
So, SpaceWorks hasn't expired. The SBIR and STTR program is awaiting reauthorization. They hope that the next vote will happen within a week. Once the once the vote has taken place and we have a positive result and SBIR and STTR programs have been reauthorized, then they're able to execute the work that is under their charter. It's a great organization, along with many of the other SBIR and STTR programs across the federal government innovation system. And we're just all keeping our fingers crossed that the small business community and universities can start back applying for those funds. So yeah, we went through a case study. We give you some insight into the federal space ecosystem. So now let's talk about opportunities and resources. On the next two slides, we will cover federal resources. Here are a few policy-related resources for you. As I mentioned earlier, the OSTP Science Priority Memo, that's where the, the science and technology priorities for the current administration were derived. I would encourage you to read this in depth. Also, the current administration released uh, an executive order ensuring American space superiority. There are a lot of Easter eggs in that executive order, and there will probably be a lot of funding opportunities related to that in the future. I can't guarantee anything, but understanding what's there can help you be prepared for anything that's coming down the pipeline. There's some also other great ones. Quincy mentioned the Space Economy Report, and Quincy, I'll throw it over to you for the federal contracting.
Yeah, yeah. I'll say that the first one up there also is around education, workforce development. And so for those of you who are interested in that, it really does a bias. I wrote it, but like worked with the team that wrote it. But it does kind of get into like a bit of like what are the skills, what are the occupations, kind of what are we talking about when we say space workforce. So that really does that, and it also lays out like what the different federal departments and agencies had committed to do, but it gives you a sense of what they're also ongoing work and are doing related to space workforce. And then the space priorities framework was put out by the previous administration also. The last piece on that slide, as you mentioned, Ramsey, around contracting, right? Contracts, federal contracts are different than grants. And so this Gateway Z is a platform that was created around for HBCUs to kind of better understand and connect with federal contracting. So it's an effort that was created with help out of the White House initiative on HBCUs with industry and federal departments and agencies to really identify what some of the challenges have been with regard to federal for contracting in the space area, and then what are the solutions. And so, and the platform kind of does a little bit of a matching where you can kind of see what contracts and what skills or capabilities are needed through contracting, and then institutions can enter information about kind of like what their capabilities are, right? To kind of aid in facilitating making those connections. And the second link there is kind of buried on the main Gateway Z site. And I think it's, again, it mentions HBCUs, but it's really for anyone who wants to learn more about federal contracting. So it's a playbook that really gets into like what is contracting, where do you have to register, how do you find the opportunities, how do you manage contracts. And so it really does, we spent a lot of time really going through all of the, I guess, the life cycle, so to speak, of engaging in federal contracting. What is the terminology? A lot of the acronyms that you may see, where you can find other information is in that federal contracting playbook. So hopefully that's a great resource for people who are interested in understanding more about support on the contracting side.
Thank you. And here are a few funding opportunities and research areas. I'm going to start at the bottom with research areas. And the reason why we listed these two is because they're non-traditional in terms of what someone who's not a space subject matter expert would think about when they think about space research. So growing food in space, this one's was from um, USDA and NOAA, NEDIS. I'm really trying not to pronounce the acronyms like I'm used to. So excuse my slow reading.
We call it NESDIS, right?
Yes.
No,
Yes.
NESDIS, but that's
NOAA
what it
NESDIS.
stands. That's what it stands for.
Yep. And so you have the environmental satellite data and information service that utilizes various aspects of NOAA information. So let's go back to funding opportunities. I'm sure many people are very much interested in these. So since Valentine's Day has recently passed, let's start with roses. Roses is from NASA, and I said the acronym first this time, is Research Opportunities in Space and Earth Sciences. There are a wide array of opportunities here, not only for just research scientists, but for your students as well. Graduate students can apply for fellowships through this. Postdoctoral fellowships can be applied for through Roses. Research opportunities in earth science, space science, but just across the board. It's I've applied for it. If you're a research scientist at a federal research lab or at a government agency, you can apply for these as well. So please take a look at Rose's proposals, and especially universities. We used to compete against university professors, and you usually will win. You usually beat us out every time. Um, the NASA Aerospace Skill Technical Workforce Hubs. This is really important for the workforce development and pathways for that. Um, because it's not just doing the research, but how do we have that train and retain the next generation of explorers and innovators. The Air Force Office of Science Research Funding Opportunities. Um, they have a wide range of activities and opportunities for space researchers um, at the basic research level, which they would call 6-1, or a little bit higher with maybe 6-2. And we will have future seminars that will go into what is 6-1 and 6-2 for Department of Defense, um, Department of War Office of Research and Engineering funding opportunities for academia, and the Department of War HBCU MI Faculty Fellowship. So we listed those two because the first one, the opportunities for academia, that's for um, researchers at the university level. It ranges from grants to opportunities for consortiums to be established. The faculty fellowship is unique for the faculty member to work at or with Department of Defense on specific projects for themselves. It's more of a career enhancement. So you enhance your career and you also get to take things back to your university. You can develop courses based off of what you learned, train your undergraduate and graduate students to become those next generation researchers and innovators and policymakers. I know I've switched over my career to wear multiple hats, and so has Quincy. So back
And
over to
I'll
Quincy.
Yeah, I was just going to say on that last one, I saw the question in the Q&A also around faculty opportunities. I don't know of any links off the top of my head, and so Ramsey, jump in if you can think of some. But I know we mentioned the FFRDCs. These are not specific NASA labs, but there are faculty exchanges and opportunities for faculty to leverage and have research experiences in collaboration with, or even at some of the FFRDCs, the federally funded research and development centers that we listed. But so you may be able to kind of, again, depending on your area, see where some of aligned work is happening at FFR as a specific FFRDC, and then identify, where there may be an opportunity. I don't know, again, off the top of my head, if there's any faculty research opportunities at NASA centers directly. But that's just, there may be, I just don't know of any. Um,
There, there were. So I will preface all of my statements with there were, because things have changed. They're very dynamic, in the federal government. So things change from funding cycle to funding cycle. And I don't know what the last batch of NASA funding, because there were a lot of discussions and negotiations over the last few months, what has stayed and what has been transitioned away. But in the past, there were NASA fellowships for faculty to come during the summer, do work during the semester, take semesters off. I had a faculty member when I was at graduate school who I was affiliated with, and he took a sabbatical for a year and was at a NASA center. And once he finished that and he came back, um, it unlocked a lot for us as students to engage with him. Not just what he brought back, but you also now have a cadre of speakers that could come in because you've made all these contacts. So it just it unlocks a lot of opportunities, not just for yourself, but for your campus. So I will encourage you to, and and we're not pushing assignments off on you, but it's going to be very important that you as a faculty member, the researcher at a university, to continue to look at these efforts because it is very dynamic. And we just provided examples on these slides, and it's just not an exhaustive list. Um, so please use these as a starting point.
yeah, and so, we provided some on the federal side, but for students, right, there are a number of, again, this is not exhaustive, but hopefully a somewhat representative list of what's available. But there's the space workforce internships. I think the first four on there really are focused on supporting students with pathways to industry. And so again, if you're students, there are all of the federal opportunities. So we're not going to, call out any particular commercial company, but they offer pathways for students to have internships, usually during the summer for at various parts of the commercial space sector, right? So this is the industry side of space, and there's obviously the NASA pathways opportunities. But interestingly enough, the Air and Space Museum, right, the Smithsonian Air and Space Museum has a number of opportunities. Professional societies are another place. So I've included American Astronomical Society has a list of opportunities. Space Force, again, if you want to be more on the defense side, there's a number of civilian opportunities. The ISS, we mentioned like a lot of the work that happens again in microgravity on the International Space Station. They have a number of opportunities to work with ISS, but also other parts of the space enterprise, including industry, are there. So again, hopefully you'll have the links here, and you'll be able to refer back to the slides when they are put in the resource hub, and you can follow them there, so you don't have to try to keep up with it here. Then the next one, I think the last slide we have is about yes, mentioned in the chat about NASA myriad partnerships, explicitly connect HBCU faculty with with NASA scientists. So myriad is a great other program that is NASA specific. Yeah. And then the last slide, or next slide, I should say, Ramsey. Oops, I think there was one more. We also have a slide that includes a number of opportunities and resources at the state level. So we've talked a lot about federal opportunities, but there are a number of state level initiatives that are really great opportunities to get involved with. I think it's the slide after this. One of them, the first one on the list is the Aerospace States Association. And so this is an association of about, I think it's about 17, 18 states and U.S. territories and tribal communities that in which let's say, at least for states, the lieutenant governor of the state is the member of the association. And so depending on the state, they do a number of different things, are engaged in the space economy and space ecosystem in a variety of ways. And so you can look there and see which states are on those lists and ways that you can engage at the state level. There is something called the Space Workforce Coalition that includes four-year institutions, two-year institutions, industry, and like state workforce boards, really talking about pathways to the space workforce, kind of what are the jobs, what are the skills, and how do we develop those and create the opportunities. And then the bottom part of the list are a number of state level commissions. And I mention them because some of them have funding that is that they provide to institutions. I believe just recently, I forgot the number, but Texas Space Commission awarded several $1 million to, I think it was A&M, Texas A&M, to start an institute. But I know they've been giving out, there's a lot of money that you can apply for from Texas. Maryland, Space Florida is another one. Alabama is doing a lot of work. And so again, they're just, some lists there that are representative where you can find different opportunities, but also like collaborators or places where at the state level, you might be able to identify funds to support your efforts on campus. And then I think the last slide has our information if you want to follow up, but we also have QR codes for the QEM events page. So Ramsey and I have done this webinar, but there have been many others this month, and there'll be many others in the months to come. And so if you want to keep up with what's going on there, we also have a QR code for the Heroes webpage. So we are former federal employees who are supporting the QEM network in the work that you all do. And so we, have a link there to learn more about that program. And there are 25 of us. So Ramsey and I are two of a cohort of 25. You can learn more about the rest of the fellows and their areas of expertise. And then there is a QR code for feedback on our webinar. I won't say give us the highest marks because that would be like unfair for me to say that, but feel free to be honest, provide feedback on the webinar because we're really here to serve and support you all. And so the more we can learn about what you need and what you think about what we've presented, the better we're able to do moving forward. And that's the end of our prepared remarks.
Thank you so much, Quincy and Ramsey, for a wonderful presentation. I would like to open the floor for questions. You can either put your questions in the Q&A box or you can raise your hand and be featured live. And we have a question in the Q&A box from William Moore. Sorry if you covered this, but just wanted to mention that most states have a space grant organization that offers various kinds of fellowships and grants.
Yes, yes, they do. And again, our list was not, it's not complete or comprehensive. We gave examples, and space grants from your states is a very great opportunity to engage the local space community. I remember as a graduate student, I was a space grant fellow, and they paid for my internship at NASA Goddard. And I believe that is the reason why I ended up getting a postdoctoral fellowship and ended up getting hired there. So please, not only for faculty members, but also for your students, space grants are a great opportunity. And I thank you for bringing that up.
Yeah, I don't know how to put something in the main chat, but I can't believe I totally blanked on including space grants. Oh, hold on. I'm going to put this answer there. I just dropped the link to the National Space Grant. It's a national consortium. So there's a institution or a set of institutions, I think in every state, that have lots of opportunities as well.
We
Quincy,
have a couple of hands raised from Debarshi. Debarshi, you are able to unmute right now to ask your question.
sure. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for this webinar. And I have been trying to find out more opportunities for our students here. We are at Alcorn State University in Mississippi, and I know there is a EP score for NASA in the state of Mississippi, but I do not know. I haven't been able to find out the opportunity to connect with them. Or is there any way we can find opportunities to collaborate with any of the NASA labs, either in Alabama or in Houston, to get some like collaboration or some training opportunities for our students? So this will help, this information which you shared. I hope we can get this PowerPoint later on. And the link you shared, the gateway, I think that doesn't give an access, and because I tried to submit, but it seems denied. I'm not sure. Thank you.
So I just dropped the link to NASA EPSCoR site. I don't know personally that I can think of any EPSCoR program directors, but I put the link to that there. And the Gateway Z, the other part of your question, Gateway Z, in order you can request access. So if you click the link, the gateway-z.com, you'll have to request access. It usually takes the team a couple of days to you fill in your information and they'll give you access. And then if you scroll down a little bit, there's a link that says download the playbook. And so the playbook that I mentioned, you should be able to get to that. It's a PDF, but to access the actual platform, you have to provide some information. And so you request the access and then you can sign in.
One suggestion I do have for professors who are interested in having their students work with a NASA center is look beyond geographical region and look at what technology areas or what science area the center focuses on, uh, because that may unlock additional opportunities for their students. Also, other universities and colleges uh, around the United States have space-related internships and summer research programs that may be very beneficial to students. Most students assume the only way they could ever get a job at NASA is to have an internship there, but from your freshman to junior year, you can gain a lot of experience by having research opportunities at universities or other research institutions that will be beneficial to the space community, and that will make you even more competitive for NASA grants, fellowships, internships, and such in the future.
And we have another question from Yulia Gorova, and I'm going to allow Yulia to unmute. Yulia, you're on.
Thank you so much, Ramsey and Quincy. That was very interesting. First of all, I want to chime in and say, yes, summer internships, get your students there. This is a jump start. And in Texas, Johnson Space Center has a number of summer internships for students, including high school students, but mostly undergraduate students. Smithsonian has also a number, both Airspace Museum and Natural History Museum, and all related to space. So this is like the easiest. Well, it's not easy because it's still competitive, but it's a direct way to involve students, get experience, get collaboration going with the institution that more likely to lead to funding for that student or for research program. Anyway, my question is actually about finding landscape, Ramsey and Quincy. So I have funded or applied and was awarded number of Roses grants, and I served on a panel, on the review panel for several years. Every single funded proposal leans or maps directly onto NASA Planetary Science Decadal Survey. So for those who may not be aware of that, the Planetary Science Decadal Survey is basically a community-driven roadmap, strategic roadmap that is produced, as the title implies, every 10 years by National Academy of Sciences, Engineering, and Medicine. And it outlines the priorities and prioritized missions and research to guide NASA's science investments. So it's a very important document, has been for decades, and it's designed to provide this long-term stability and sort of a consensus on research planning. So for planetary science, the most recent survey that came out in 2023 places strong emphasis on robotic exploration, Mars sample return campaign specifically. As we know, the current administration priorities shifted, although overall NASA funding didn't change much, but the priorities shift significantly towards human exploration, as Quincy stated in the beginning, to the extent that Mars sample return is put on pause, hold, or I don't know how else to call it. So my question is, to what extent does this recent shift on NASA budget priorities towards human space flight undermine the predictability and stability that the decadal survey process is intended to ensure for academic research planning?
If you don't mind, I'd like to take this one. At least start. So I'm glad you brought up that point about the decadal surveys and use the planetary science decadal survey as an example. Um, if you're new to space research and development, uh, there are multiple decadal surveys. There's Earth science, there's planetary science, there's heliophysics and astrophysics. And so understanding how those decadal surveys are are produced every 10 years and the information that's contained within them, you will have, in general, a theoretical map of what may be funded in a 10-year time frame. Now, just because it's in the decadal survey does not mean it's going to get funded. There's plenty of examples over the last several decades of things that were in the decadal survey that were not funded to the level that they thought they should have been. And so it is it is very hard for someone to hedge their bets all on what's produced in those surveys. They're a guidepost, but they may not guide you all the way to your destination. I would think of it as you're driving somewhere and your GPS cuts off. And you may have to figure out how you're going to get from point A to point B. And sometimes you may have to pivot. And because you have technologies that you may be working on that are related to a specific area, you may have to think outside the box on how they may have uses in other domains or other and have benefits for other areas. For example, if there was a Mars sample return technology that you're working on, can you pivot and use that for lunar sample return? Can you pivot and use it for mineral extraction on a asteroid? Can you pivot and use it for something else? And so using those examples may help you to just shift your paradigm to something that you can control versus the funding cycle. It's a guessing game for everyone from year to year. Line items can be removed and budgets for specific items for not only NASA, but any of those institutions that we listed, including the Department of War. So there are no safe bets, but those are very great guides to understand the general landscape and continue to use them as guides. Over.
Thank you, Ramsey. Yeah, I figured this is the rewarding and pivoting is the way to go, but it doesn't work for big missions. Let's say the same MSR, Mars Sample Return. It is an enablement mission. If we cannot return samples, how are we planning to return people from Mars? Right? Yet the Congress did not fund this mission. So we have now samples on Mars that cannot be returned, at least for like in a previous planned mission. But yeah, you answered my question. Thank you so much.
And we have a couple of questions from Yinshu Wu. I'm going to give Yinshu the opportunity to talk. Yinshu, you have the floor.
Okay, thank you for the opportunity. Uh, I want to follow up on a previous question. So we already got an award from NASA myriad award. So it's supposed to start last year, 2025, but we never get a fund. It's a 3-year project, and the grant office from NASA. Our names and our project is still listed on the NASA website, but we never got a fund. It's already over 1 year. And they always respond, it's pending, we will do later, we will give you fund later. You can start a project now, but we will pay you later. But we never got a fund after 1 year, and it's a 3-year project. So what we should do, we should just give up. Yeah, I don't know. I just want to get some suggestions about this.
Yeah, no, I don't think you should give up. But I mean, neither Ramsey nor I are, from NASA, so we can't really speak to that exactly. But I don't think you should give up. I'm sure somewhere in your communications there's a point of contact. I would also assume that your sponsored program office would have a, point of contact. And so I think kind of there's been a lot of personnel transition as of late, but I'm sure at a minimum, if you can't directly, your sponsored program office might be able to find a contact at NASA who can kind of help them understand what's going on or what the process is to receive the funds or what the new procedures are. But unfortunately, that's not something that I'm not a NASA employee, so that's not something I can help you with. But I don't think you should give up, and I'm sure the situation is very, very frustrating.
I can share a little bit more information. At the beginning, manager of that office said, "The money is here, but you just need to patient. Based on a White House office release document last year. So we just need to revise our project for a couple keywords. So we change it. But after half a year, the manager of office actually left, and now we contact them again. They said, "Oh, we don't have money." So that's the situation. I feel like at the beginning they said money is there, but now they said no money. So
Yes, yeah, that definitely frustrating. Very sorry that you're experiencing this, but I do think that it may be, finding a different point of contact. And NASA, as like I said, there've been a lot of staff transitions, but someone there should be able to get to the bottom of that. Though it may take a little bit of time to figure out who the right person is. But definitely don't give up, and maybe see if your sponsored programs person, someone in that office on campus can help you with that.
okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Can I chime in just a little bit because I have actually experience with that? Please reach out to the program officer. Identify, well, you know what program you applied for. There is one person that is a program officer. They don't issue money, but they handle all the proposals. It is a very good idea to establish like a relationship with program officer in any case when you apply for grant. But this kind of questions or uncertainties, I think should be addressed directly from a researcher, not through administration, but just from the researcher to the program officer.
So to grant officer in NASA.
Yes, so there are several programs and every sub-program, I guess. So I'm most familiar with planetary science programs. But there's a handful of people who are program officers that handle the panels and reviews and actually ultimately sign on a decision to award the grant. So they know, this person knows that you have been awarded a 3-year grant. And they should know what the holdup is. It can be because of continuous resolution. It can be some internal things. It can be just delays. But that's what I would do. I would just go to program officer.
Okay, thank you so much.
We have one last question from Gulnaz Javan. Gulnaz,
Yes,
handing you
can
the
you hear
floor.
me?
Yep.
Okay. First of all, thank you so much for, nice presentation. So my question is, I know a little bit crazy question. I'm working the forensic soil samples. How can be, or can we access the any from the Mars, any soil samples? Because I heard a couple people working the NASA, I think they can get it. Is there any processing or do you know anything about this? How we can get the samples, we can do like microbial diversity or something. Can we do that? So it is my question.
Yes, thank you. I'm sorry, I don't work for NASA anymore. I haven't worked there for quite a while, so I don't have an answer for getting the samples and what the process looks like. Um, I'm not sure if someone else on the call has the answer for that, but I don't.
Okay, thanks, Dr. Smith.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much for attending our webinar today. We've gone about 2 minutes over time, but I wanted to thank everyone and especially Ramsey and Quincy. Okay. Oh, we have a raised hand? No? Okay. Thank you so much, everyone. And we'll see you at an upcoming webinar. Thank you.
Thank you.